When we get tired, the obvious solutions become not so obvious. And as dads, as entrepreneurs, our go to is typically just work harder, like go harder, try harder. But the obvious solution is right there in front of you, and you'll never see it because you're working too hard, you're too tired, you're too fatigued. So
Knight Campbell, welcome to the Dad's Project podcast.
thanks, Nick. Super glad to be here.
Yeah, man, pumped to have you on the show. Not only are you an outdoor enthusiast like myself, you're a leader in that field, you're a veteran and a father of three. You recently shared with me that you just took your first backpacking trip with all three kids. Where did you go? How did that go?
Oh man, the location is super secret. No, I'm just kidding. Kearsarge Pass up in the Sierras, fantastic. I think a couple years ago we took two of our kids. Our daughter was roughly, well, a little bit older. Our son was, I think, 2 months old when we did this. She was close to a year, and we went right, and it was just absurdly hard. Like climbing up this scree field, gorgeous but really hard. This time we went left. I kept going up toward Kearsarge Pass, and there's some beautiful lakes up there. Set up camp is about a mile and a half. Our 6-year-old did the whole hike all by herself, which was amazing. The 3-year-old I ended up fireman carrying for the last half as she slept. Literally, I put her over my shoulder. She's like started snoring in my ear, which is awesome. But it was a fantastic experience. Yeah.
Man, that is such a beautiful experience. I recently had a conversation with Will White, one of the early founders in wilderness therapy. He's got a great podcast, Stories from the Field. He's an author. And I know you have experience in NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School. And he commented that on that show, the risk management specialist talked about enrollment being down, less people exploring adventure, choosing to be outdoors. Why do you think that is as an outdoor leadership professional?
Yeah, I think honestly, Nick, it's the economy. Like, pull the string back to people just don't have money or time. Things are uncertain. They're worried about, at Knowles, for example, is 30 days out in the field, which is incredible. I've led a couple courses out there. I think the world of Knowles. But if you're not sure if you're going to have a job when you get back or if you're going to make enough money to support your family, especially in the guiding industry, people are not, they're watching their pocketbooks and seeing what's going to happen with tariffs and everything else. So I think that's the biggest impact right now. I think more and more people are getting outside. I know for us, we teach Leave No Trace, and there's a statistic out there that 9 in 10 people have never heard of Leave No Trace. Every group we take out, they're corporate teams, a lot of them have never camped before, they've all heard of it. So I think those statistics are getting older and people are getting out on their own too, and maybe just not paying us to do it.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Something I think we've done 30, 35 nights since February out in a tent with my
Nice.
daughter, stepson, my wife, and campgrounds are crowded, national forests are crowded. You don't necessarily see it. So maybe it is just that, we're not spending high dollar to do those type of events. How do you cultivate that love of wilderness? Obviously, you're doing it with your kids, but what's your advice to a dad that's listening to this is like, I want to start getting out more. It's something that I love. We had a pop-up camper when I was a kid. How can I start to cultivate that love and excitement of the outdoors in my kids who have cell phones and tablets and who knows what?
Yeah, well, if you take them to the right spot, there's no service for those cell phones or tablets, so that helps. Doesn't sound as sexy as maybe what people want to hear, but a big part of it is don't do it for yourself. I love going outdoors. I love adventuring. And frankly, taking 3 kids backpacking sucks. It's hard work. We got almost no sleep. My 3-year-old literally clawed at my face most of the night. I don't know why. I think she was asleep. But we're passionate about it. We want to build that in their lives and bring them that joy of adventure and that respect and love of the wilderness. And like I said, my 6-year-old hiked the whole thing. And so if you look at it as discipline, as I'm going to do this even though it's going to be hard, but in the long term, my kids are going to grow from it, and I'm going to build this relationship with them so that when my daughter's 16 and she's climbing harder than I am, she can lead all the pitches and I'll follow, and it'll be amazing. So it's more like an investment than having fun. And there are moments of absolute bliss. I think those outweigh the difficulty, but the difficulty is absolutely there. And to go in thinking like, oh, I'm going to, have a couple beers by the lake, throw a line in, relax. Like you ain't going to do that with kids. They're going to immediately hook their finger on the fish hook, and one will be running into the lake with no life jacket on. And like, what happened to relaxation? So I think it's just that paradigm shift is really important.
Yeah, that paradigm shift, that mindset going into it, something that Lauren and I always talk about is that we can have a challenging day as parents at home, or we can go out camping or backpacking, and there's still going to be challenges. They may be different, but at least we're outdoors. It's almost forced quality time. Your kids are going to complain. They're going to be hungry. They're going to run around crazy. They're going to cry. But look, nature, that reframe is so important. What does that behavior look like? You're climbing. You've got one kid on your shoulder. Your 6-year-old, I think, daughter, correct? 6-year-old daughter is crushing it. I remember years ago, she was hiking in San Diego when I was out there. What does that behavior look like when things get hard? How do you reframe in the moment? Like, man, I just want to be present. I want to stay connected to my kids. What does that look like for you?
That's a great question. And I'm thinking of the Bernstein Bears. There's a story where they get in a bad attitude or whatever, and they have a literal wheel and they just turn it around. And my 3-year-old's like, I can just turn it around now. I'm like, great. Where's the wheel? Like, I could use that. I think it really is about going in with the mindset of this is going to be hard in different ways. Like, it's not going to be climbing a mountain hard. It's going to be emotionally difficult. It's really important to have that mindset. If you don't, like, you've already lost. And then in the moment, I draw my strength from the outdoors. So if my kids, like you said, it's going to be hard either way, whether you're in the house or in a tent. If I'm out under the stars, at least I've got that. I'm drawing energy instead of having it sucked out by the Roomba running late at night and driving me crazy or whatever it is. So, and then it's all emotional, right? It's not physical fatigue. Typically, maybe it's being tired, but really pinpointing like what's annoying me right now. And usually for me, it's that I don't have control. I can't tell my 6-year-old, like, stop whining. I can't tell my 3-year-old what you're crying about is ridiculous. Just stop. That just makes it worse. So it's this idea of like, I don't have control, and I'm just going to be okay with that. I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to maybe just say, hey, cry it out. I'm going to walk over here and cook. Don't put your hands in the stove again, or whatever it is. But it's about just being okay with not having control, which I'm very bad at, and all of our clients are very bad at. I think it's just a human thing. We don't feel super safe when we don't have control. So
you are absolutely speaking to me, because I think that is, we talk about in Sherpa executive coaching, my why it matters, and mine is to survive, which comes with that. Like, I want to control everything that's going on. And that is the beauty of the outdoors, is that you are often not in control. And I think this connection for me, that was powerful what you just shared, is that there are so many lessons in taking my almost 2-year-old daughter and 11-year-old stepson out into the woods. Lessons for me, just like there are lessons for them. And they are hard, and it is emotional. And that is such a beautiful way to, like, hey, walk into this knowing it is going to be challenging. And how can you grow from it? I appreciate you sharing that. Knight, you're a rock climbing guide. You're an alpine guide. What has climbing mountains, climbing rocks taught you about life and how to be a great dad?
Nick, we don't have enough time for that. I'd say, and every time I'm learning. So I literally just got back from the climbing gym, climbing with a new person, which is awesome. Like, she was like, yeah, let's meet at the climbing gym instead of on Zoom. And I'm like, yes, this is my kind of person. And I was climbing a harder climb, and I fell off, and I took a breather, and then I realized that a big hold that I needed was right in front of me. And it stood out to me just in that moment. Things like this pop up all the time for me and for our clients in the outdoors. When we get tired, the obvious solutions become not so obvious. And as dads, as entrepreneurs, our go-to is typically just work harder. Like, go harder, try harder. But the obvious solution is right there in front of you, and you'll never see it because you're working too hard, you're too tired, you're too fatigued. So that's just a lesson today. I often share in my 20s, probably in my 30s if I'm going to admit it, I often looked at a mountain as getting to the summit was success or not. Even where I proposed to my wife, we were trying to get to the summit. I was going to propose on the summit. We didn't. And she was like, oh no, he's not going to propose. I did. And she said yes. But it was hard because it felt like failure not to get to the summit. And at some point in my career, and there wasn't like a bright flash, But at some point, I realized if it was only about that 10 minutes of the summit, I was wasting 20 hours of my life in misery because mountain climbing is not fun necessarily, especially if the summit is the goal. Whereas the conversations we have, the little moments, especially with kids, and I think they've taught me that a lot, just slowing down and eating berries and laughing along the hike and knowing like, hey, it's going to take an extra hour and that's okay. That idea of the journey is more important than the destination. And I really think that's a life lesson. Like if you can figure that out, I'm working on it. I'm not there yet. But if you can just say like, hey, I don't have control. Like every day is a new part of this journey. I'm going to enjoy whatever it brings. It doesn't really matter where I end up because it doesn't. It doesn't matter what letters are behind your name or what you did. It matters how you did it more so. Really firmly believe I learned that in the mountains before I learned it anywhere else.
That is a simple but beautiful takeaway, right? Like the true growth is in the journey, not the destination. And I think climbing is that perfect analogy because we get so caught up in the summit, right? Summit fever is a thing, and it has been at the peril of so many people who are like, that is the only thing that matters. And they're chasing that summit. Do you have an example of something maybe with your daughter or multiple of your kids that like, hey, we set out to achieve this, but we were able to tie that lesson in, and what would that example?
I wish I had a really great example right off the top of my mind. Now I'm going to go back, write notes, and do this intentionally. Yeah. Do I have an example of doing that? I mean, I think I learn it more than they do. They don't need to learn that. I don't think that's a lesson. That's a lesson that society forces us to learn because we ask kids from day one, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what does success look like? And where are you going to go to school? And are you going to college or not? And all these kind of fixed mindset, not growth mindset type things. And I don't think children think that way. They're like, oh, that's a cool butterfly. I'm going to go check that out, which is really cool. And then probably if you ask me this in 10 years when my oldest is 16, I'll have a different answer. Like we will be intentionally talking about this. But I think they're teaching me that constantly. They're like, hey, let's stop and look at that. Or hold on. I like literally, wait, Dad, I'm smelling the roses. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, thanks for hitting me over the head with that. Like, obviously. Yeah, I think it's kind of the other way.
Yeah, now that you say that, maybe a poor question on my part as the guide in this show, but that's such a powerful reframe because, something that honestly, full transparency, annoys me when we take our daughter backpacking. We were just on the AT a few days ago, and even when we go for runs, like she'll want to be in the stroller. Any small flower that has some sort of color to it, it is like, stop, Dad. A moan and a groan because she wants to look at that flower. She wants to touch that flower. And it's such a great reminder to just slow down. Like you said, hey, I'm literally smelling the roses. And how can we as adults, specifically outdoors, just stop and just sit there, right? Sun on your face, enjoying the moment. And kids are such a powerful example of that. Transitioning a little bit into your work with executives and the work you do with your company, you talk about breaking down complex concepts and systems into like manageable tasks. Can you take that and translate it into being a dad? How do you find time to break down systems, into managing 3 kids, a business? I believe your wife is a doctor. Is that correct?
She's an orthopedic surgeon.
Orthopedic surgeon. We got a lot going on in the household. What does that look like day to day, week to week in the Campbell household?
Pure chaos, Nick. I wish I had a better answer. I'm laughing. I was a pilot before all of this, and I love checklists. I think they're super valuable for all kinds of reasons. In my dreams, I want to create a leadership checklist because that's not the end all be all. You can't be a good leader from a checklist, but it would benefit a lot of people, honestly. Just checking off. Like I talked to my people today, and I keep, we take them on these trips, backpacking, mountain biking, climbing, whatever. I don't have a freaking checklist or even a packing list that says like pack these things. I have it for my executive clients, of course, because it is a good system. And I don't know why I don't have that. So I laugh. I should have that. Something I've really grappled with over the last 5-ish years is this idea of like everything's always changing. And you hear that all the time. And we're like, okay, it's always changing. But it really is with kids. And you know this. You have a almost 2-year-old, you said, every week it's different. Like what makes them emotional and sad one week is totally and radically different than a week later. And what they struggle with one week is all of a sudden easy. And they're like, oh, that's Dad, stop telling me to do that. That's easy. And so that this comfort of things are going to change. And it goes down to like what the kids are doing to, we hung out, we were friends, you moved, things changed. Now we're reconnected. Awesome. People that I really like, I don't like anymore. People that I didn't like, I do like. And the more that you can just be okay with that, the less you fight that change. And so we're talking about breaking things down into systems, just saying like, hey, this is going to change, whatever it is, that whatever my kids are annoying me about, or a relationship or a business opportunity, or even concepts. Like I'm studying teams now. The research on teams is changing. That's crazy. You'd think we'd have it all figured out. We don't. So I think it's not really a great answer. How do you break down systems and be super dialed? Don't forget sunscreen. Don't forget the nipple for the bottles if you have an infant, because that sucks. As long as you have sunscreen and bottle nipples, you're probably okay.
I think that may be the title of the podcast, Sunscreen and Bottle Nipples with Campbell. So with that, it sounds great, right? Hey, be comfortable in the chaos. Be comfortable with everything that's going to change. But I'm a fly on the wall. I want to talk behavior. What does that look like? I'm observing you. How are you managing that? What do I actually see? Something just changed. Chaos ensues. What happens?
Yeah, not well. So I don't know that, like, be comfortable with change. I don't know. My guides and I have been kicking this one around. Like, are people actually comfortable? You see every veteran's got on their LinkedIn, like, leads through ambiguity, great, comfortable with change, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if people are actually comfortable with change. I think there's some personality drivers, or if we're just better equipped to deal with it. Like, if you have sunscreen and a rain jacket and it starts to rain, you're prepared. So you're not comfortable with change. You're just prepared for the inevitable change. I think it's less like the lesson that I've learned isn't as much being comfortable with change. It's still scary. It's still weird, but appreciating it when it happens, like noticing and saying like, that relationship that used to be like, meh, is now, and that's cool, right? That thing that used to be hard for my kindergartner is now easy for my first grader. Noticing and appreciating, just taking a second to be like, oh, cool, smelling the roses as things change, instead of being behind it all the time. And because you can easily say, oh my gosh, like everything's always changing, I can't stay on top of it. Yes, you can. You never will stay on top of it. If you could, then it wouldn't be hard and it wouldn't be change. It would just be a trajectory. Being just joyful about, oh, okay, that's changed, cool. What's next is maybe the behavior. It's a very stoic kind of like, I can't control that. I'm going to appreciate it. I'm going to move on type thing. And then I think that there's a humility thing. Like if you want here's the thing that you should do, schedule less. Just especially with kids, whatever your 100% is, like this is what I think I can do. Schedule 80% of it, and you'll thank yourself. And I do that half the time, all the time. Just kidding. But really, like if you actually can say, like you have the humility to say like, yeah, like that's 100%, I'm going to schedule 80% of that. Then you can stop and smell the roses with your kids and you're not going to be stressed out. Then when someone's like, hey, can we meet at the climbing gym? You're not like, oh my God, I can't drive there and have this phone call. You can just do it because you didn't overschedule yourself. And not overschedule, like didn't schedule yourself to capacity.
So what I'm hearing is, the old adage of the only thing consistent is change, and being okay with that and appreciating it. Like, this has evolved. This has changed. How can I grow with this? How can I change with this? And then that second piece of being okay, only scheduling the 80% to allow for change, to allow for flexibility. I think maybe that is one of the huge lessons in parenting is you have to drop the rigid mindset of this is how everything is going to be done and the structure and the timing and everything else, because all of a sudden you forget the bottle nipples. Things have changed.
Yes.
Things have changed.
Can you drink? Can you try it? Here, just put it to your lips.
Just take a big gulp. No? Okay. Well, we're going to figure this out. Okay. So you talked about being a veteran. You're a pilot. Talk me through what did you do in the Navy? And then we'll dive into some of the lessons from your service, your time teaching in the Navy, that have still, carried with you till today?
So, just in a nutshell, I went to the Naval Academy, flew helicopters based on the West Coast. I did a bunch of deployments to the Western Pacific. And came back, went to the Naval Academy, instructed leadership, and was a company officer there. And then went on a carrier for my last tour and got out to support my wife going to medical school, which people all the time are like, well, how do you become a mountain guide? I'm like, well, first step, marry a doctor. And they're like, oh, make this financially feasible. I get married to a doctor. So yeah, that's kind of the trajectory of my career.
And what have you taken with you from your service? I know there's a lot, and I being a veteran myself, I've literally had maybe a third of the guests on the show have been veterans, and it's interesting to me to hear what are those lessons in leadership, decision making, service, whatever it may be, that continue to serve you now as a parent, as a professional, as a founder. What are those lessons?
Yeah, it's hard for me to tease out like what's my personality, what's from my parents and my upbringing, what happened in the military. If I had gone to University of Virginia, would I have a different answer? I don't know. I love this idea of discipline, and not like slapping people with rulers discipline, but just doing what you say you're going to do. I love working with veterans. When a veteran's like, yes, we're going to do this, I'm like, great, I'll send you the contract because I know you're going to sign it. We're going to do it. Not always the case outside of the veteran community. So doing what you say you're going to do, and just these little steps. And this isn't just military. Other people do this. Like I think about atomic habits and improving 1% every day. And right now, every morning, my daughter and I do 2 pages in her workbook for first grade. She's going to first grade next year. And it's sometimes terrible. Sometimes it takes 40 minutes of screaming and crying. And why do I have to do this? It's so frustrating because I'm thinking, well, if you just do it, it'll take you 5 minutes, but we've spent an extra 35 yelling about it. But I am committed to doing that. And I think that both shows her the value of discipline. When I told her we're going to do that every day, she's, okay, this is what it means to keep your word. And also maybe she'll be better equipped to read and do math. I hope that also happens. So I think discipline is a big one for me. This also might be personality driven, but clearly defining things. Maybe this comes from instructions. I learned somewhere between JO and mid-grade officer, if you're going to have an idea, you need to look it up in the instruction and show it to your boss with like, here's what the instruction says, here's how it fits or doesn't fit, here's the pros and cons. Having like defining terms. We talk about stuff like courage and trust and all these big words without ever saying, okay, this is how we're defining it in this conversation all the time. And it's crazy that we don't define it. Like, what is the conversation worth? You could be talking about something totally different. So I think defining things and looking at the root source, you see something on Fox News and it's all sensational. Did you listen to or read the speech from the person? Because it's probably different. Go back to the root source. So those are 2 maybe things that are personality driven, but also were reinforced probably through the military time.
The concept of the personality and reinforcement, I do appreciate you highlighting that, because I think it's like a lot of things we hear about money or success, but also the military, I think, plays into that you're still the same person that you were. Yes, there's that period of like they're going to break you down and build you back up, but really it's just going to highlight who you were. There are dirtbags in the military. People think maybe they don't exist. They absolutely exist. But if you are a strong leader with great discipline, that's going to get, gasoline poured on the fire. But if you weren't that, maybe you'll get a little, but you're going to return back to who you were. For a dad who wants to, and I think you defined it well, add more discipline for themselves to also share that with their kids, doing what they say they're going to do, and possibly holding their kids accountable to do their workbook or to do whatever. What's that first easiest step?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really, really hard. I don't have an easy answer, Nick, because you want to have fun with your kids. My girls know I'm a sucker for ice cream, so when I say, hey, we're not going to get any ice cream if you don't stop, like they know I'm probably lying because I really want the ice cream too. I think in the last year, I feel like I've been submerged in fatherhood and parenthood, just getting through the day. It is so hard to just get them to school and back to bed every day. And I realized like, whoa, like the whole point of this is to build new people of character. Like what am I doing if I don't instill character? And so I think talking about it, modeling it, and picking a couple. And this comes from Angela Duckworth. She did some work on character for a while. That was really good. Like pick two things. Right now for me it's courage and kindness. And I think those are going to change for my kids as they get older. Not like I'm going to change them, but they're going to be like, no, like that's not my thing. Curiosity is my thing. Whatever, their personality is going to start getting more and more defined, but pick those and reinforce them. I say, and my wife says all the time to our girls, her son is too young to care. He's just like, don't forget the nipples. We say we do hard things. Like in this family, we do hard things. And that's the discipline, right? Discipline is about doing the thing that you don't want to do because you know it's the right thing. And you really have to, just like leading in the military or leading anywhere, we think it's obvious. We do hard things. They don't know that. You have to tell them over and over and over and model it and correct them and explain like, okay, well, I see what you did there, but that was the easy way out, and here are the consequences of what you did. Here's what it could have looked like if you'd done the hard thing. And have your heart broken over and over and over when they mess it up. And have the patience to be like, yeah, they're 3, they're 6. That's what they do. They're learning. And frankly, I mess it up too. So who am I to say, how could you let me down? Take the easy way out. I don't know if that answers the question, but I like pick a couple things, talk with your kids about it, say like, this is the facet of character I want to instill in you, to leave you with. And I imagine, and I said, like, I feel like I came up from being submerged. Gosh, in 20 years, what do I want them to say? Like, my dad got me to school on time most days, or my dad taught me to do hard things and be kind to people. That's what I want.
Modeling and setting the example is such a huge part, and having those conversations. I think we try to model, we're doing the right things, whether it's doing hard things, that's something as a veteran myself, we also lean into, whether it's taking care of your body, it's, hey, we have to leave this campsite better than we found it. That is not easy to do, to pick up someone else's trash. And the way I talk to my 11-year-old who is anti doing any of that is like, hey, that's who we are. Like, we do that. This is who we are. We go the extra mile. And I was like, if you do that, that will carry with you for years to come. But I love those 2 points of modeling and having the conversation around those 2 pieces. And I wrote down courage, kindness. We're going to add that to the title so it doesn't seem so ridiculous. Courage, kindness, and don't forget the bottle nipples. But that's such a valuable point there. I want to switch gears completely. And this is something that, has been on my mind a lot as I look at what does my future look like. I think about my daughter. We're talking, this may be live, first time talking about it, maybe having another one here shortly to start thinking about that. And you recently shared a post about AI diminishing critical thinking in students, and you're an educator. How are you thinking about AI and the changes that are upon us when you think about your kids? What are your thoughts around it? What is exciting versus what is not so exciting?
It's not. I'm emotionally wrapped up in this topic, and I love that you brought it up, Nick. It's such a fast changing thing right now, and honestly, like full transparency, I do a hard thing in not giving our kids screens. So right now, it's not a factor. Like I'm not really thinking about in the moment how this might impact them. So it gives me a little bit of breathing space to watch the trajectory of where is this going. I saw this secondhand source. I still need to dig up the actual study from MIT. But just last night I saw this, that if you write a paper with AI, and this makes total sense, and all of the research around learning corroborates this. If you use AI to write the paper, in their research, first, our brains literally get dumber. Like they stop working. Our brains get addicted to it, like a drug. They say, well, I don't want to think, like let me just get the answer from AI. And you literally don't remember what you wrote. Like if I quizzed you a week later on the paper that you wrote, and I'm not saying like you had AI write a paper that you never read. I'm saying that you ask AI, like, help me create a framework, all the prompt engineering, create a framework for the essay on the War of 1812 and blah, blah, blah. Like, and then it creates a framework and then you fill in the gaps. You won't remember what you wrote. You might not even remember what you wrote about, like the topic. That's insane to me. And I think radically dangerous. I used to think AI was going to create super intelligence and it was going to kill us because it's frankly the smart thing to do. I don't think that's going to happen. The more I've researched it, it's just probability and statistics. I might be wrong, but it won't matter if we get killed off by super intelligence, whether I'm right or wrong. I think the more likely thing is like we're going to get dumber because it does all the work for us. And you've seen that a little bit with Google. Like we don't dig into sources. But you still have to do some work with Google, and you still Google something and pull up the article or whatever and read it, I hope. So in my classes and in working with my kids, I think a lot about learning science. There's a ton of research about how we learn. Our ability to retrieve something creates learning. So if I quiz you, and I, to my students' chagrin, quiz every class, basically. Not because I'm draconian or mean or want to give bad grades, and I make them super easy. I even make them open book sometimes, but because I want them to retrieve that information and remember. But there's so much, like I always laugh. We teach executives and we talk about emotional intelligence, and it's a hard sell because executives are like, well, I've done like 3 or 4 courses on emotional intelligence. Like I know all about it. And then you ask them like, cool, like who came up with the idea, or what are the 4, core components of it? And they're like, I don't know. Because we think we read it, we see it on AI, we think that we know it because we're familiar with it. If you see, self-awareness and self-management and empathy and all those things, you're like, oh yeah, that's emotional intelligence. We don't really know it. So I think if I add a third to courage and kindness, it'll be curiosity. I think that emotions are our superpower, and understanding our emotions and leveraging or using them artfully, which I can't say I'm an expert at yet, but I'm working toward it, is a superpower that AI can't have. And so, those are really important. I think, there's the article, I think in the Wall Street Journal, about how AI is making the internet dumber, um, which makes sense. Like AI is regurgitating its own material at this point. And so it's not actually creating new stuff. So this might be a blip in the roadmap of human ingenuity, where all of a sudden we realize, oh wow, we can actually create better, more novel, useful things than AI. I'll stop there and see what questions you have. I could go on and on about AI, critical thinking, and the dangers of it to our kids.
No, I love this perspective that, well, it might kill us, but it won't matter. They're not going to listen to this podcast and hear your opinion down the road either way. But
Yeah.
the focus on curiosity and learning, because it is so easy just to, let me type the prompt in there, get a response, and then I just move forward and accept that as fact or truth, right? And it is creating even a more powerful echo chamber for every single individual, because it's giving you, it knows what you want to hear. So for you working with your students, which I think will also translate to you as a father or me as a father, how will you instill that vibrant curiosity when answers are just served on a silver platter? And full transparency, like I love giving it a prompt and getting an answer. I try. It's like I try. Oh my gosh, 100%. Like, oh, let me just ask this computer to give me the answer. Why would I think about this? Trying to go that next level. So you can coach me. You can coach your students. How would you frame it and inspire curiosity?
There are so many ways to go with this. I want to go back to the journey over the destination. Like if you're destination driven, it's dumb not to use AI, right? Like you can get further at face value, climb more mountains, whatever, using AI. And what is it worth? If you want to be a good parent, AI is not going to help you instill courage and kindness into your children. It's not going to help you slow down and smell the roses. Like those are things that AI can't do. And the more we get addicted to it, the less we're able to do that. I think that growth mindset and Carol Dweck's work is really valuable here. If as parents and educators, we can get people excited about learning. Like my daughter asks, how do they make bicycles? Oh my gosh, like let's find a video. That's a fascinating question. How do they form, aluminum tubes and weld everything together and design and get all those things? Not because we need to know to make our processes more efficient or sell more widgets or crank out our business plan faster. Just because it would be cool to know like how this works. It would be cool to know. Back to how do you do this in a practical sense? Ask those questions with your kids. Look things up. Use AI to answer those questions. Point me to the resources that show me how bicycles are made, and then point out on the bicycle. Doing science experiments. Like I love to do little science experiments with our kids. Have them create hypotheses and then test them. The scientific method is pretty cool. So, and just the joy, like doing it just for joy. Not like we have to figure this out so that you can get a good grade on your test or whatever, but let's just explore this together. I think that's the answer. I don't know how easy that is. It is a personality driven thing. Like curiosity is part of who I am. If it isn't part of who you are, it would be hard to do that probably.
The takeaway I'm getting from maybe the whole show thus far is doing hard things and enjoying that journey, because there's going to be struggle, there's going to be ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but it's learning to bring joy to that experience, whether it's doing research and projects and processing AI and its benefits for our kids, or it's actually going out into the wilderness and, hey, this is where we're trying to go today, but slowing down, smelling the roses, and enjoying that process. And if we can all take that little piece away, I think this was a beneficial conversation, because it applies across the board, right? Like in so many examples. Switching gears one more time, I think we could stay on AI or the outdoors for multiple episodes, but the last few questions that I ask everyone, number one, what is your one text message that if you had the opportunity to send to every dad, what would your message to them be?
Yeah, I think it's this idea of don't be underwater. It is so hard to stick your head up and think, where do I want my kids to be in 20 years? And not like what college or what job, but like what kind of human beings am I trying to create? Like full disclosure, I struggle every day. I just find myself like, we got to get through this and this and this and get them to school and home and in bed. Like it is a massive effort. I get that. But if you can be intentional about slowing down, doing the hard things, reinforcing like, hey, what you did there, not kind. What you did here, super kind. Like, that's great. This, not so much. Because that's what matters. Like, what kind of people, the type of human beings they are when they're 20 matters way more than whether you got them to school on time or all of the other things. Yeah.
Not being asleep at the wheel. I think that's a
Not even
concept
asleep.
I've talked about.
You're in reaction. You're in firefighting mode all day, like, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like somehow I'm like 20 minutes ahead and I blink. I'm like, oh my God, we're late for school again. It's not even like asleep at the wheel. It's just intentionally putting your head back above water and being like, okay, we're going to have this conversation on the way to school about courage because my kid has to do something hard today. It's my role as a father or mother, as a parent, to have that conversation and make meaning of it for them instead of letting the moment fly by, because I also have to make sure my toddler has shoes on and I think I forgot the snack and, didn't bring the nipples for the bottle. So
it all comes back.
I'm going to lean into that.
All right, second question. If you were to meet your future self for coffee, what would they be proud of you for doing as a dad?
I think, and I want to plug this book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. This, like all of what I'm saying and going through has been catalyzed a little bit by that book. And the whole premise, if you don't read the book, is like you can't love other people and be in a hurry. John Mark Comer uses the example of trying to get to church on time. You're like, get in the car, like get strapped in, stop fighting, no, get your shoes. And that I find myself in that all the time. And I'm slowly, laboriously, mostly failingly pulling myself out of that and appreciating the little moments and laughing more, not getting caught up about whether we're late or not, creating relationships, teaching, guiding, helping them develop character because I don't have to hurry. And sometimes that's scheduling less. Like sometimes it's very tactical, like, okay, like don't schedule 6 things on one day because then you have to hurry. Sometimes it's trashing a plan because we found roses to smell. I hope that's what my future self would be like. Yeah, keep doing that. And hurry a little bit less.
The hurry to church reference really hit home. I remember the church grab, right? They're pinching you behind the arm, like, we gotta go. And you're like, I thought it was, we're blessing everyone. We're having this beautiful church experience. And your mom's yelling at you or dad or whoever. So yeah, just, I wrote down that book. We'll definitely find an Amazon link and drop that in the show notes. Something I want to dive into personally. So I appreciate you sharing that. Last question, and this is a cool part of the show, my favorite. The previous guest, Freeman Beals, who was he's a river guide, now working with men as well up in Canada. He leaves you a question as the next guest on the show. And this plays right into who you are. So it may be easy or challenging for you to answer, but if you could create one resource for all dads to have, what would it be?
A checklist of like what to pack for your outdoor trips. Golly, why is this so hard? Yeah, I think like honestly, that would be super helpful to have a checklist of what to pack for various trips. And even in a beautiful, perfect world, bins already packed with all the camping gear or whatever. I think some exercise, like you're a coach, you got this, some exercise to help. We do this with our clients. What are your core values? No one knows. Like 80% of our clients are like, I don't really know. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about it in a long time. But more so, what are your kids' core values and what are you doing? Like, what can you do to reinforce those? Because you as a parent, you like want to teach them all the things. Like, here are all the things about being a good human. And it's just confusing and impractical. And if you can just pick two, probably in a conversation with them as they get older, and reinforce and build and set that foundation for whatever those are, that would be really useful. So like a core values with kids guide or something like that.
Yeah, starting with your own, right? And then how do your core values, your family values, trickle down to those 1 to 2, like you shared, courage and kindness to your kids? And then how are you setting the example? How are you having those conversations? Powerful. Knight, real quick, share with the audience the work, the beautiful work that you do, and then the one place, if you want people to reach out, where should they reach out to find you?
Yeah, we're helping small growing teams build leadership capacity to scale. Communication, trust, psychological safety, all those types of things. We take a team outdoors. First, we do a bunch of discovery work, figure out what exactly would help them. So like one team didn't have psychological safety. We took them outdoors. It shows up outdoors because everything does. And then we can pinpoint it and facilitate those conversations to do that better. It might be conversations about communication. It might be delegation and work sharing, workload sharing, all kinds of things. Best place to find us is our website, cairnleadership.com. Cairns are little stacks of rocks. Got one on my vest here, CAIRN leadership.com. And from there you can connect with us or, connect with me on LinkedIn. I've found so many amazing people on LinkedIn. So that's a great place as well.
Absolutely, guys. We'll make sure we drop both the website and then Knight's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. If you like this episode, give us a 5-star review. Reach out to Knight, have those conversations, follow him. He always drops tons of beautiful insight on LinkedIn, whether he's reading or part of other shows or lessons from leading outdoors. But Knight, I really appreciate you, man. It's been great to reconnect, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate the invitation.